Hey, good morning, chat. Thanks for joining me again on this beautiful Sunday. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where you're watching. For those of you new to the stream, hi, I'm Ben, but most people online know me as Nahamsec. And on Sundays, we do this little thing called live recon, where we either hack a company, quote unquote, hack a company, and we do recon, or I invite one of my hacker friends and we get to interview and get to know them a little bit. And this week is no different. We're gonna do both. We've been doing it for the past couple of weeks, and we're gonna interview our friend Rezo, and then we're going to do some hacking on Ubisoft, finish off the program in the next couple of weeks, and then push the data out for all of you to enjoy and use. So before we bring on Rezo, let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me okay, and I want to hear from everybody. Where are you guys watching today's show? Where's everyone from? And if you're ready for the stream, I'm going to look through the chat really quick and say hi to a couple of people. I see Jason Haddix is in here. What's up, Haddix? Prevo, what's going on? Charon, Cherry, hey, thanks for joining. Sari, thanks for joining on LinkedIn. Who else is on here? Endlessly. Hello, Cyber Stewed, Top Scoder, MyGFX1, Sahil with the Yo Nahomies, Phantom. I see Haddix in here. Let's see who else is on here. Let's see. See you over there. Cool. Looks like a lot of people are watching. How's it going? Christy, thanks for joining again. Happy to see you in here. I see people from LinkedIn joining. JD, thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Trying to keep up with everybody. Well, welcome. All right. Are you guys ready for Rezo? Let's welcome him to the stream. Hey, man. I think you're on mute right now.
Yes, sir. What's up?
There we go.
How are
How's
you?
it going, man? Good. Thanks for joining me
Good.
again, dude.
Yeah, happy to do it. Excited to be on here.
So I'm familiar with you, but for
Yeah.
those of my viewers who are, they haven't seen you or they haven't had the chance to like see your AI generated art that you make on Twitter, give us a rundown. Who are you? What do you do? What's your story?
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, my name is Joseph. I am from Kentucky and still live here. I went to the University of Kentucky for computer science. Kind of a funny story. I was actually mechanical engineering major for 3 years, and then Calc 4 and thermodynamics just ruined my life. And I was like, oh man, I'm not enjoying this at all. My girlfriend at the time, but now wife of actually this year's our 10-year anniversary.
Wow,
But
congrats.
thanks. Yeah, she said, "Do you even enjoy it?" And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So, and I had been daydreaming about hacking Wi-Fi and coding up projects and stuff for a long time. So, made that switch. But yeah, then I was a developer in test, doing like automation for like UI tests and stuff for a local unicorn that got sold to HP for a couple years. Then finally made the switch to my true passion, doing security, doing hacking. The goal,
Nice.
I think I was always watching like or listening to the Social Engineer podcast and stuff like Darknet Diaries, and really wanted to, I think, do pen testing. And for a long time, I actually thought that web app was kind of boring, and just was like more into the networking side of stuff. I wanted to
Yeah.
break into places and do more network and Windows-based stuff, but no, eventually got into bug bounty. Um, yeah, during that whole time, we've got 3 kids, so I was actually going to mention that with 2 dogs and 3 kids here. If we get interrupted, I
Wow,
might stop the
that's a full
camera and
house.
mute it. Yes, it is. Yeah, they're
No
on
worries.
Saturday
Let
because
us
I'm
know if you
sick.
need it. We'll
Yeah,
talk
we had a
about
big storm.
we'll talk about how you got into bug
Sure.
bounties. I don't wanna give no spoilers just yet. So
Okay.
just gonna
Yeah,
give you a heads up.
perfect.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I guess just more about me. Yeah, obviously I'm into AI art. I also love running. As most hackers do, chat on Discord with you guys,
Yeah.
fellow hackers and bug bounty hunters, and I think that's about it. Yeah, hang out with the kids and the dogs. But I work for App Omni, which is a SaaS security startup. So we do SaaS security for the enterprise. Been there three
Nice.
years.
Tell me a little bit more about how you heard about hacking. You mentioned you were doing mechanical engineering, and it was running your life. You weren't enjoying it. But how did you hear? How did you hear about this thing, hacking? Was it just through
Mm.
school? Was it before you had some experience as a kid? What was the? How did you hear about? That could be a career, or that even heard about hacking, or you could do something with hacking and hacking into things.
Yeah, I would say um, unlike most hackers, I feel like most hackers I know, I don't know if this is true for you, Ben, but like got into coding like really young. Like they may have been coding in
Yeah,
like middle school or high school or on IRC chat or all of that. I really wasn't. I played, typical video games like Diablo and stuff like that. So I was in that subculture, but I never got into like the botting side of it. Like a lot of my
yeah,
friends now are like, oh yeah, we were writing bots and trying to hack the
hmm
game and stuff. But no, yeah, once I switched to computer science, I think it must have just been stuff like at the time Hack 5 and
okay,
what else was on back then? It was like that really old school, like kind of, I would just see DEF CON stuff online and really
yeah,
thought that, hacking Wi-Fi sounded cool. At that time, it was right whenever, what was the old app that you could like steal someone's cookies really easily and log, or because like Facebook and everything were still on HTTP when I was like a freshman in college, and you could like steal someone's session and like take over their Facebook account and stuff.
yeah.
It was all that was going on. I think that was just enticing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, the reason why I asked this question is we have both. We have people that are like, "Oh, yeah, I went to school, I heard about security. I went, I was in high school, I heard about competition, got into it." And then we have exactly what you say, people that were like, "Oh, we were running bots," or "I was hacking random
Right.
things," or whatever that is, right? It just I wanna show people that it doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what
Right.
you've done in the past. There's always room to join this community, and there's things you can do within the community. You mentioned going to school. I want to talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit. You said you were in freshman and all that stuff that was happening with Facebook. You were still doing mechanical engineering, right? So
Yeah.
security didn't
Mhm.
happen for you until after college.
Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I first graduated, I was like, I'll just go be a dev. Maybe I'll eventually get a sweet job at one of the big five, like Google or Facebook or something. Um, but I just always had like, even though that was the case, I still had like a bent on security. Like I said, I had bought like a Wi-Fi dongle and hacked on some Wi-Fi and stuff, like my senior year, I think. But kind of funnily enough, kind of, and again, like you said, there's multiple inroads. I was
hmm
definitely one of those guys that was like, oh, I need to go get my certs. So when I wanted to get into security, like I went and got my security plus, and then I did like the CEH and CHFI,
So wait,
which I
hold on.
still
Let's talk
take
about
now.
that. Let's talk about that. So the certificate
Yeah,
thing you just said, I want to kind of talk about it.
yeah,
So you just to get that out of the way, the college thing is, college had almost nothing to do with your current career, right? You didn't get a computer science degree.
yep, that's
You
right.
didn't get a security
I did
degree,
get
but
yeah, yeah. That's what I switched to computer science from mechanical
oh,
engineering.
did you?
So I
Nice.
did end
Okay.
up graduating. Yeah,
Okay.
I
And
graduated with
then
that, and that's why I was doing dev work.
got it. Okay. So you had a background in computer science. What about search?
Hmm.
You said you mentioned CEA, someone that I caught at the end. What
Yeah.
other certs did you get?
Yeah, so I did the Security Plus. My wife and I were
Okay.
actually missionaries in Haiti for a year. And during that time, I was like, oh,
Oh,
I need to do something technical to stay technically sharp. And so we were home for a week, and I was like, I'm just going to cram for this. And I studied for 3 days, and that was it. And then I passed it. And that was
nice.
really the
That's dope.
first kind of step towards security. And then eventually I went and got like the CEH and CHFI because I knew if I was going to switch from doing coding to doing security, I didn't want to take like a big pay decrease or something like that.
Yeah. And with bug bounty hunting, did those certificates help at all?
Oh no, I mean it was all just a resume builder to get into the industry. I would say, but yeah. I also eventually got my CISSP while I was doing security engineering and SOC analyst work, but none of the four certs. I think the CEH might have had some like optional labs that you could do that would have
CH is
maybe
very
been.
web heavy, right? CH is supposed to
Yeah,
be literally web heavy in some
yeah, it
aspects of it.
is. It is, but I just crammed for the test. I wasn't like intentionally trying to learn. I feel like I was just targeting passing it, and so
Yeah.
none of it carried over for me. None of it really stuck. I definitely don't think it's like necessary, but I do think doing those certs initially really laid the foundation for like knowing the lingo, knowing the acronyms, knowing like when people were talking about security things, they really helped me not feel completely lost. Like if you
Yeah.
don't know security, I still think it's a great way to just like brush up on like here's the basics, here's the foundation, here's the lingo used in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. I think for a switch over from any like outside of security background to security, I think these certificates are a really good place. Regardless if you want to make
Yeah,
fun of some of them and discredit them and say they're too easy or
of course.
whatever, but it
Right.
still gives you two things. One, it gives you the lingo you need to learn and understand, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
and two, it's literally you're in with the HR departments. That's what they're gonna look for. Like,
Right.
are you qualified if you have never done this work?
Yep.
So we talked about you going to school, you getting these certs, you know, getting the SOC analyst and getting a job and not wanting to take a pay cut. Where did bug bounties come in? How did you hear bug bounties are a thing and that you can make money from hacking into companies? How did you hear about it?
Yeah, to be honest, this is going to be where I toot your horn. I don't even know if you knew this, but it's definitely from seeing like tweets and specifically like your streams on. I think I had
Cool.
started following more people into the infosec space on Twitter, and I started seeing stuff like that you were going to, that you were doing your live recon, that you were doing, and I've got a funny story about that, but yeah, my methodology was literally a shout out for someone in the chat, Jason. Like I definitely took Jason Haddox's methodology, recon methodology, and used
Yeah.
that to like slowly get into bug bounty. And then I would watch your streams and follow bug bounty hunters on Twitter. In fact, my first report was that one. You definitely remember the outcome of it, but you probably don't remember that you didn't know it's my first report. That Yahoo bug that you found on a live stream, it was like a metrics endpoint.
Yeah,
It
I
was like a
remember
P
that.
prof or something, and then someone ended up reporting it and escalating it and getting paid like 10 grand for it. And so I reported it the second it was on your stream. Like I just like ran off and reported. It was like my first report on HackerOne, and it was a duplicate. Somebody had reported it like 2 weeks earlier, but that guy ended up making like $10,000 from that bug.
Holy shit. I think I remember seeing your name on stream. I remember you messaging me a few one-liners that you were working on and saying, "Oh yeah, you know that thing you
Yeah,
were working on. I found a better way of doing it, whatever." I definitely remember your name popping up, but I didn't know that's how you started, like, doing more and more bug bounties.
yeah.
Um, that's exciting. I didn't know that. It's good
Believe
to
it.
see at least some of the streams are getting in the hands of people that are actually doing something with it, to be
Yeah, no, it
honest.
made a massive impact on my life, which we may get into, but we may not. I mean,
Yeah.
back then, I feel like that is one neat thing about the bug bounty industry hey, is that there are it's such a small community that just by
Yeah.
simply working hard and like working your way up in it, you really can
Hmm.
like you rub shoulders with people that you really look up to, whether it's people like Cleo, quit it. Whether it's people like you guys or quit it. Or Jason or whoever else. Like I looked up to so many people in this industry, and then eventually was able to really like become friends with so many of you guys, and it made
Yeah.
a profound impact on my life financially. A lot of people know that I use some of the bug bounty money that I've made for adoption. Like we've adopted two kids from South Korea, and
Yeah.
so I'm extremely thankful for you all pouring back into the community, helping me get into it by one advertising yourself, but then also helping me succeed by sharing information and sharing what you all learn and do.
Yeah. Okay, this stream's gonna want to see the dogs, man. You gotta give us a peek of one of the dogs if you have a smaller
Okay,
dog.
yeah, here we go. Ooh, this is Luna. She's a Labradoodle. She's a good
Oh,
girl.
so
Yeah,
cute.
and then Cleo, come here. Cleo is like the smallest dog ever. I think she was a runt of Yorkies, and so she has never gotten bigger. She is, I think, 8 years, 7 or 8 years old. She's a heart snatcher. She
I
loves to
have
cuddle.
a
She'll sleep with whoever watches her.
These are beautiful dogs. My partner has a similar dog. I'm gonna show you a photo if I can find it really quickly.
Yes, please
They
do.
are very cute dogs to like
Thank
play
you.
with, and
Oh, very, very cute. Yeah, Yorkies are the best, man.
Yorkies are very cuddly and fun to have around. But yeah, I just figured the chat's gonna want to see them. People start
Yeah.
making a comment about it. Um, Cool. So I think, yeah, let's going back to the interview. Yeah, it's with the community, it's insane. Once you put in the effort, right, and you get in and you put in the effort to try to communicate with these people, speak the people's language, and be able to submit a few reports and be able to say, "I have contributed to the community." It's really easy to make friends, man. It's a lot easier than most people think.
Yeah,
It's just
everyone
you have,
is extremely kind, man. Like
yeah.
everyone, no one turns you away if you're bringing like value to the table and you're just being genuinely kind.
That's exactly what it is, though. It's bringing something to the table and not just trying to benefit it for yourself or just asking for shortcuts and that kind of things, right? Because one of the things that I see a lot of people messaging me that I try to respond to people is, "Oh, I want to do this thing. okay, what have you tried? What have you done so far? And you don't get to see a lot of that, and it's kind of like hard to help in that aspect. But if you're doing your part, you're contributing, you're getting into the communication or the community, and like discussing in the conversation and going to these events, it just takes out what you said, the shoulder up with someone in the industry that's gonna help you, whether it's directly or indirectly.
Yeah,
Um,
if you Google non-technical bug bounty tips, I did a blog post on that, and I even have some scripts people can literally copy and paste if they're going to ask for collaboration help. Um, just kind of saying, hey, can you collaborate with me? It's probably not going to get a response. But if you say, hey, I have a partial bug here, it does this and this and this, and
yeah,
I've tried this and this and this. You know, can you try
this is
something next,
really
or
good.
can you escalate?
Yeah. I wish people would message me more, like, because they're like, "Oh, I found an access. Can you help me?" Okay, what's the problem, dude? Like, is it a filter? Or is it like this is just really not XSS? What's the DOM look like? Um, these are really, really good scripts, dude. Holy crap! So if you're watching this, somebody in the chat, throw it in there. Actually, let me see if I can find it myself and highlight it. I'll put it on there for everybody to also take a look. That's a really good way to be able to message people that are that are doing these things, to get to know them or reach out to them in a little way. Cool, thanks for sharing that, man. Let me highlight that and put it on here. Okay, let's talk about more on the bug bounty thing. You mentioned coding. Do you think coding is a requirement for bug bounty hunting? What's your take on it?
So I would say definitely not a requirement. I mean, I know loads of people that I think you can get good at web app testing without being good at coding, but it's
Yeah,
just a force multiplier. Um, I will say ChatGPT does make it a lot easier to bridge that gap. Like if you can
oh,
just
for
read a
sure.
little bit of, if you can read a little bit of code at this point and kind of, copy and paste error messages into Google, you can probably use ChatGPT to cobble stuff together now. But
Yeah,
I'm no expert programmer. I'm sure that if lots of devs and lots of even hackers saw my code, they would think it's terrible. But it doesn't have to be super efficient, especially when you're able to scale with things like Axiom or just be calm, be slow.
yeah,
Start a script and come back and check the results tomorrow. Yeah, I think it's a force multiplier, but not required.
I agree. One of the biggest tips, or the biggest best way to put it, is scripting, which is coding.
Yep.
So if you know how to script, you know how to do bash. I don't know if people do PowerShell much with bug bounties. If you know how to do PowerShell, even as a thing. But I see Ipsix in the chat. Actually, I'm going to quote him. He said exactly this. Like, I don't need to be a full stack developer, but if I know how to script, even little tedious tasks, it doesn't even have to be hacking. Like, take up an IDOR, right? If you have integers
Right.
that you're looking for, if you know how to write a Python code that loops to a number of integers from 1,000 to 5,000 to see which ones come back at a 200 or 401 or 403 and print those out, that is a beautiful way to script and make your life easier, versus having to type in 1,000 numbers to see which one finally hits to find a
Right.
vulnerability, right?
Yeah, and I do think you'll pick that up as you go, like that scripting stuff. Like you're gonna have the desire, I think, as a hacker to automate something whenever you're in the middle of hacking. You're like, oh man,
Yeah,
if only I could do this. I think if you take that moment and learn, how to do that in Bash or learn how to do that in Python, it's just gonna keep compounding as you learn more and more.
absolutely. That's a really
I'm,
good way to put it.
yeah, you probably use the same, Bash loop code, constantly from the command
Yeah.
line, the same as I do. It's like eventually that just becomes muscle memory. So
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that I've written have become more on the alias side, or I've put my own, file in
yeah,
the bin directory. It's like if I type it in, it works immediately, just because it just makes my life easier
yeah.
because of how much I use the same commands over and over again.
Yeah, I know
Um,
there are guys out there who do like Kate's clusters and everything else for their hacking, but I've always followed like your style, Daniel Miesler style, or Jason Haddock style. Like I just have a bunch of bash aliases, a bunch of random one-off scripts that still do the work. They still find the bugs. They still get the data. So
yeah, I agree. What about CTFs? Have you ever, or do you participate in CTFs? What's your take on them?
I don't. I do think they can be really good. When I first started, I did Hacker 101. I still think that's a great recommendation for people because it gets that first private invite. And as an intro to web app testing, I think the Hacker 101 CTF still just, is a great way to learn those little basics. You could probably do it 15 other places, but why not do it at a place where you're going to get an invite out of it? So I recommend that. I've never done CTFs for like, yeah, there you go, Jason. Um, I've never done CTFs for competition's sake, but I think
Yeah.
I've always thought it would be interesting or fun. But I just think that for someone as busy as me with a full-time job and multiple kids and stuff, if I'm going to spend my time hacking, I'm just going to do it with bug bounty. Since there's a
Yeah.
financial incentive there, it's really hard to spend time doing CTFs.
Do you think CTFs do help for people that want to get into bug bounties?
Having not done a lot, I'm not sure. I would say there are probably some that are really helpful because I know
Yeah.
you've probably heard hackers say this like, oh, this bug was like almost CTF style in the way that it like, was this chained into this into this. But I've also heard a lot of people say it's not super great. So I would say it depends on the CTF. There are probably like hack the boxes or stuff like that
Yeah.
that would probably be super beneficial. And then there are probably really contrived examples of CTF. You would probably know better than me. What's been your experience with it?
I think it's a little bit of both. So what you're saying, I consider like a hack the box machine a CTF, right? It doesn't have to be a competition. It's just the thing you hack into with the purpose of finding a single solution or multiple solutions that give you a flag to demonstrate that you have, finished those. There are some CTFs that are not really hacking related. So if you look at like the Pico CTF, some of their non-hacking ones are like how to do a get request or a head request. What are the cookies
Mm,
value? What are the cookie values? What are these headers? Right? If you think about it as a hacker, you need to understand what those things are,
yeah,
right? Because if you
absolutely.
take over those, then you're not going to understand how these two APIs are communicating. What is
Right.
this header? What am I going to do with it? You're not going to understand a lot of these different, cores and all these things, right? You're not going to be able to pay attention to that. So I think it does play a role. And honestly, if you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have probably said probably not, because
Yeah.
CTFs weren't as realistic as it is today. But
Hmm.
with bug bounties, I think more CTFs are coming out that are more realistic
Right.
because of bug bounty hunters putting out more stuff. There's been so
Hmm.
many CTFs that I've gone to that I've seen either people telling me, "Oh yeah, we saw this bug bounty report on HackerOne and made it into a report." I think it was Sam ZLZ and Donut. A couple of us were the last B sides that happened before the pandemic, right? And one of these CTF challenges, we were not sure if it's a CSS injection or not. We solved it. I called Donut. I go, Donut, this is the bug that you and I found. Please help us solve this. He solves it, and I go to the CTF creator. I don't remember her name. I think Niru. Yeah, Niru from Google. I go up to her and I go, hey, is this a CSS injection, or do we find an unintended solution to it? And she goes, yeah, that is your report that you guys found on that site. It was some explicit site on HackerOne when it was like over 18 sites. Um, that we found this CSS injection. It's like it's based on that, and it just blew my mind to realize bug bounties are becoming a place for people to draw inspiration to create CTF
Yeah.
levels, right?
That's really cool.
So in that aspect of it, I absolutely think so, because you're learning something real that someone's done in their past life and in the past in their career or in the pen test that they've written, and the CTF creator found that online and made it into an actual challenge.
Yeah. Props to them for being able to like set all that up too. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's so I ask people because I'm not a CTF player. I never consider myself a CTF player. We asked this question to show there are some crazy CTF players. Like DC is a monster CTF player that's broken into security and bug bounties. Corbinik is another one. Joel Techno Geek came through a CTF at HackerOne. There's all this different background that we can show that says it doesn't just need to be one or the other. It could be just like you. My CTF is hacking because that's what it was for me. It was
Hmm.
hacking and learning things. And there's also the techno geeks and Corbinics and DCs of the world that are coming in through bug bounties with doing CTFs and translating those skills into bug hunting.
Yeah, to me, I feel like it's almost like whatever motivates you, use that to drive you to success, right? Like if you love CTFs, do them because
Yep.
you're probably gonna learn from them and then be able to apply that knowledge. And so if you're passionate about that, I would say do it. There's actually just with this platform, and we're talking about CTFs. I'd like to mention this. It seems like South Korea, I have a connection there with both of our kids being from South Korea. It's kind of interesting because they have the best CTF teams.
Yeah.
It's like always the US and South Korea, but I don't see any. There's not a single bug bounty hunter on HackerOne from South Korea that I can see. There may be some. If someone knows, I'd love it if you drop it in the chat. And I find that really fascinating. Like I think it'd be neat to kind of dig into why that's the case. I would love to see more
Yeah,
South Korean hackers.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing that I can't think of a lot of South Korean hackers that I know to do, but
Yeah.
I can't name one because I usually I'm good like, oh yeah, so and so's from this country because
Right. They're very tech forward and they have amazing CTF players and they know like they're really great at security. Like they do a lot of Web3 stuff. They've got, there's a lot of like chains and coins coming out of there. And I've never met a single bug bounty hunter who's from South Korea. So I don't know if there's some
that is
rules against
interesting.
like earnings or something. Because isn't Space Raccoon only able to like use some of his earnings each year due to like yeah, his country's like laws around bug bounty income. So I'm wondering if South Korea has something similar.
It could be, or they're super anonymous and we don't just know about it. They're just staying under the radar, right?
That's
Because it's
true.
not, they don't want to be
That's
under
true.
the government's radar like we want to hear because it's a
Yeah.
different world in Eastern Asia, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, that's I've never thought of that. That's a very good point. I'm gonna see if I can find someone to get on the show and talk about this. That'd be
Yeah,
really, really
that'd
cool.
be great.
Let's talk about recon. This is the live recon show, and it's not gonna be a live recon show until I ask you about recon. Tell me, what
Perfect.
does recon mean to you? And yeah, what does recon mean to you?
I mean, as most people know, I love FFUF, and scaling it wide is usually axiom. So for me, recon generally means, well, I think, my initial definition of recon was Haddox's recon methodology. At that time,
Yeah,
I think it was V2 probably. And I just took, his methodology and just tried to script it into Bash. So, I've got a little Bash script. That I almost always run that just gets subdomains, looks for a live host, um, and then I slowly added on from there. So it would get IP addresses and then do like vhost scanning on those IPs that were owned by that company. Then eventually got to the point where I would like automate running FFUF on each of those with my quick hits. Then I, eventually added like doing recursive fuzzing with FFUF on those. And then whenever Corbin released GAU or GAU, then I
yeah,
would,
yeah.
start implementing that, figuring out which of those paths were live, and then adding that to the word list. So I would say, in general, I think of recon as getting domains and then doing content discovery. And there's obviously
Okay.
a lot of intricacies with content discovery that could be 10 different tools, but that's what I think of.
What are some of what are some of your favorite tools that you use? You said get all URL by Corbin. There is FFUF or FUF, FUFF, how you want to call it, or FFUF. You mentioned those are the ones that you mentioned. What do you do for vhost scanning? What do you use for some of the other tools that you mentioned or techniques that you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely FFUF or FUF is my go-to tool. I would say outside of that, I use a lot of XNL Link Finder. Previously, I used Link Finder until
Yeah,
XN Link Finder came out. For VO scanning, I just use FFUF. Like I said, I get the IPs from the domains and then just fuzz in the host header with like some short words, and then any domains that resolve to internal IP addresses, I'll slam in there as well. Um, what other tools do I use from the command line the most? For a long time, I used Meg, and I stopped using that eventually. Um,
Meg is a really good way to get your IP banned.
yeah, I'm sure.
Speaking
Uh,
from experience.
yeah. So I think that's about it. I mean, I'm obsessed with most of Tom's tools, Tom Nonom's tools.
Yeah,
A lot of my methodology results in fuzzing pretty widely, fuzzing recursively, getting a bunch of data, doing that with Axiom, and then having to like go through that data and going through that and kind of parsing it and chopping it up and doing it on the command line. A lot of what I learned was from watching that old Stoke video with him and Tom Nonom with like the
yeah,
Vim tips and tricks and Bash tips and tricks. Like I use Anu constantly. I use unfurl. I use all of those like little command line tools that Tom wrote. I'm
nice.
a huge fan of. Yeah.
On the data set side of questions, someone in the chat, Elliot asks, want to know if you are collecting recon data, maintaining databases, and do data-driven bug hunting, or is it just simple text file-based stuff that you have?
Yeah, it's all. So I will say this is actually pretty useful. I mean, everyone has to solve that for their own recon engine. I definitely used just like text files, but you can get the equivalent. You can get a lot of the equivalents of a database with that. Like I have a top level folder for every target, And the way that I kick off my recon can be by a single host or by like a root domain, so that it,
Right, okay.
like a lot of times a program will come online and they don't want you to scan their whole, their whole space, their whole URL space or TLD space. And so I'll use, like I'll use the one that only starts with a single domain or subdomain. But my files all, and I think that this may be on my blog somewhere. If I can find it, I'll send it over. But the way that I do my fuzzing of all of the domains that are in scope, it saves the response in a unique file based on the subdomain and the path. Because I'm sure you do this all the time, Ben, but like if you're fuzzing with FFUF and you then change the path and refuzz, or you change the path and refuzz. If you don't change the output file every single time, it's gonna like overwrite your file over and over and over. And I'll
Yep.
often fuzz a bunch and then go through the results later. And so I caught myself overwriting my same file. Um, so yeah, I normally just do like a bash while loop over the domains running fuff and with the caveat of saving every fuff run as its own file so that I
Yep.
always have historic results. So yeah, I'm a big text file guy. The other thing about that is, I don't know if you do this, Ben, but when I have a bunch of targets in their own folders, the naming scheme that my recon engine puts out is the same. So like the file name for like live host is always all underscore live underscore
Yep.
domain. And so if I ever want to scan for something at scale across all the programs that I hack on, I can just do like a find command on all underscore live underscore asterisk, and,
Asterisks,
and
yeah.
then and then run like an exec cat on that. So it cats all of the live in scope domains that I've ever found across all my programs, and then I can create a single file out of that I then look for a specific bug across all programs for.
I used to do stuff like that. About 2.5 years ago, I completely stopped doing automation to that extent. So everything
Okay,
that I do now as recon is just fresh every time. I no longer care
cool.
to have stat. It's just more of a.
Yeah,
It becomes very when a new. I caught myself when a new CVE drops to just obsessively look for vulnerabilities within all the live
yeah,
hosts that I have. That it just
hmm
became something that I didn't want to do anymore, and I accidentally
yeah.
deleted one of my boxes, and I was like, okay, well, that gave me a reason not to
That's
do it
easy. Yep.
anymore. I do it for the stream. It's the same concept. It's recon slash company slash domain slash, and
Yep.
then in that folder it has all the domains that we have found, all their subdomains, all their live hosts, and the
hmm
HTTPX results, and
Right.
all the other results. But there's a good way. That's literally how I used to do things. I used to rely on dir search to tell me if I had a Jira hit on a company because this JavaScript hit as a 200 with that size that I wanted it. So
Right.
I would query for all of I would search for all of that across the
That's cool.
entire, dir search output and see what that came. So it's a good way to do it. And I don't think you need to have a database to do all these things. It'd
Right.
be nice to have a database, but these tools have become so easy to grep through with all the data that they give you. That's just
Yeah.
super easy to do that nowadays.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to mention on the database thing is I even have with a new, you can I like have a file that's like all 200s.
Hmm.
And so like at the root level of the domain. And so as a part of my like daily automation, it will use HTTPX or whatever, FFUF to hit that. And if it
Yeah,
gets a 200, it will undo it to that 200 file.
yeah,
And so, and then I pipe that to my Slack. And so it's kind of like the same effectiveness of a database entry, like whenever you have a change from like a 403 to 200 or a 401 to 200. Because I think that one thing that'll sometimes catch is like if a developer spins up like a domain, but like it's 403, and then they accidentally expose it to the internet one day, then or another thing I noticed was like a lot of people have subdomain enumeration constantly, like daily, and so they might be finding subdomains before me, which is totally fine.
yeah,
But that domain got registered and the developers haven't actually put anything on it yet. And then
yeah,
3 weeks later, they actually put content on it or they like actually bring it online. And that's when a lot of other people might not see it because they saw this domain 3 weeks ago. And so now my automation changed it from a 403 or 401 or whatever. It's like newly alive or newly 200. And then that's come into my Slack. And so I get to see that.
nice. Yeah, it's diffing your data regularly is very, very important, and I think
Yeah. Did I lose you or did I go down?
I think it's me. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say it just these tools outputs are so good that you need to have a database. Slack is a great way to do it. Discord, whatever you want to use, is a really good way to do it. But
Yeah.
diffing your data is definitely really important, especially if you
Mhm.
know those things that you want to look for. Let's talk about Burp Suite.
Yes, sir.
What are some of? I know you use Burp very regularly, but what are some
Of
of
course.
your Burp Suite, you know, plugins that you use regularly that you think anyone should have in their tool belt?
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna look over here because I got my other laptop over here. Generally, everyone should be using Param Miner and that sort of stuff, like
Okay.
request smuggler. But of all of the authorization testing, auth testing, I definitely prefer Authorize. Um,
Okay.
who was it? Who's the Canadian that got interviewed that did like an Authorize YouTube video? It might have. I think Stoke might have also uploaded it
Stoke did a video with Fisher
with Fisher. Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
Authorized. Yeah.
Yeah, that video inspired me to actually learn it. I feel like
Yeah.
that would be one tip for everybody listening. Like, as you're consuming content from, Twitter or YouTube or BinStream, like, don't just like think, oh, I'll just do that later. Like, I'll just figure that out later.
Mhm.
I'll just learn that tool later. Like, just buckle down and learn it. It doesn't take that long. It takes, 30 minutes to figure out most new tools, because
Yeah.
it will really, it's worth that investment of time. Because I've used Autorize on loads of sites, and a lot of times it doesn't find anything, but the fact that it just by default checks for unauthorized access, and you can then check two accounts where one's higher privilege than the other. It's been really useful to me. I really
Yeah, for
love
sure.
the 403 bypasser plugin. It's never turned up
Really?
a hit for it's never turned up a hit for me. Actually, it has turned up one or two hits for me, but it's very infrequent. But I love it because I feel like it's checking everything for me. Honestly, 403 bypasses are not that common in general.
Yeah.
But I think people love talking about it, but it very seldom happens. But yeah, 403 bypasser is like, I enjoy running it on things, even even if it doesn't hit turn up that much. I will say,
But it takes
I
that
mentioned
one hit though, man. It takes that one hit
right,
that
yeah,
slash
always
admin
worth
like
it.
freaking opens up, and then you can do that. Next thing you know, you're in an admin panel for sure.
Yeah. So the other two things I mentioned, one with Param Miner, definitely kind of add to that. I feel like
Okay.
most people probably don't tweak their word list. At the very least, you should be going out and getting Arjun's word list and appending it to that, and just making sure it scans both, because there are so many um, parameters that are not in the default param miner word list. So that's definitely a big tip. The other thing is, and I think um, most people don't know about this, and I share it with everyone because I think it's a really huge tip for both pen testing and bug bounty hunting. Ben, in Intruder, do you like right click and do scan to find insertion points a lot?
Not really. I do. Honestly, a lot of things that I do. So I've changed my self hacking a lot. I'll talk about that. I'll let you finish your thought process.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, that to me I think has been a big game changer. I think most people when they use like just don't even understand active scan, and I still don't really like
Yeah.
the way that it's like in the product right now because it's just kind of confusing. But like if you active scan a host, are you just done? It's like, well, I don't know. What did it check? What did it not check? All of that's kind of opaque and black box to the user, and you can drill in and figure out what it's actually checking, but that's sometimes frustrating. But I love sending stuff to Intruder, setting specific insertion points like in parameters, and then right clicking. If you're in Intruder and you right click after you have insertion points defined, you can click scan define
Yeah.
insertion points. And then from Agari's, I did do a Agari's Burp course, and one
Yeah.
thing he has you do in there is set up a custom active scan profile, like because by default it actually skips a bunch of checks, and so you want to kind of like re-enable those. So I'll leave that as a activity for the viewers, but you can go in there and
It's
make it
okay.
like prioritize false negatives. Anyways, you can make it do more scans and not skip as many scans, and so often that'll find more stuff. I think
Okay.
that's all that I would mention. Yeah, I think that's all that I would mention. Oh no, the one big tip. So a lot of people don't know this. If you use Hackverter, I guess I should mention that. So I also use Hackverter a lot.
Okay.
Hackverter gets added to the process from Intruder, even though it's not in the UI at all. So if you want to fuzz for a like fuzz for SQL injection, and it's inside of an encoded object. There's like no really good way to do that within Burp, except for what I'm telling you to do right now, which is install Hackverter, go to repeater, set the Hackverter parameter so I can code that parameter, like the tags. So there's like, there's
Okay.
tags. Hackverter has tags, which allows you to encode or decode things. So you want to in repeater set the tags around the parameter such that it will encode it for you properly. Then send that to intruder because Hackverter isn't in intruder. And so then when you're in intruder, you can send that with a scan define insertion points, and you can do a burp active scan on an encoded value or a double encoded value. And so that's a really powerful tool that a lot of people don't know.
I've actually never heard of Hackverter. I just pulled it up on the stream for people to see. To be honest, even though I do a lot of recon on the stream, I no longer rely on almost any tools for bug bounties at this point besides Burp Suite.
Yeah.
And the reason why I said that is I just was going down the rabbit hole to just always scanning for things and always directory brute
Yeah.
forcing for things to find a lead, and relying on those gets really hard sometimes if you don't find something. I feel like I get bug bounty ADHD when I'm jumping from one program to another to another to another to
Yeah.
another because I'm not finding anything. I have a video that talks about this. It's going to come out tomorrow, and surprisingly, I made more money coming back to bug bounties with that approach and taking my own advice finally that I give out on YouTube and seeing if it works. And it turned out it works. I'll talk about it more later, but it's good to hear that there is the toolings that how people use and what you do with the same tools that other people do, or you use it of like, when you said a new, for example, of using it with your Slack, it's cool to see that you can build your own database on Slack with a $6 subscription on a Slack enterprise for yourself, where you have different channels and different webhooks and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
And honestly, I
as,
love that idea, Ben. Like the fact that I also have found myself, a lot of my initial bug bounty findings were from Big Recon,
yeah,
and I don't know if just more people are in that space because you you popularized it or what, but
yeah,
I definitely find myself doing way more manual. I still, anytime I get invited to like a wildcard program or something, I'll still kick off the old Recon
absolutely,
engine.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree with you. The majority of my time is spent, setting in Burp. Hopefully
Yeah, I
one
mean,
day sitting in Kaido.
I think there is a need for doing recon, but your recon should be finding interesting things to hack on, right? Like
Mhm.
it shouldn't be just so the reason why I stepped away from doing recon is I don't want to say I popularized it. If I did, good for me. Like it's not that, but it's just more of I realized that I gave this perception to a lot of people that most of the big bounties that I get are from recon, when in reality I've had some great bounties come from recon, but it wasn't because I found this cool endpoint. It was that I found this cool website that everybody else had seen, but I
Mhm.
just found a JavaScript file, or I found some like PHP file, JSP file that gave me a lead that got me the initial foothold into that asset, right?
Mhm.
That's a huge difference in someone that's like the today's new, that's all automated work. So I'm,
Mhm.
being in the public light, what I want to do is I want to tell them like, you don't have to be an automated person. Your automation
Right.
could be what you want to find vulnerabilities with. So that's kind of why I stepped back from it, is I want to also make sure that that advice works. And it's worked for me in the past couple of weeks. But you're absolutely right. There was a program that you, myself, and a couple of friends were hacking on. The recon in there was great, right? But we had an advantage because we figured out a thing that nobody else had figured out that gave us access to a lot of different assets. And without that thing, the recon didn't matter, I feel like.
Right.
Right now,
And
to me.
I think a lot of people think that recon will result in bugs, but I think recon data just allows you to um, more quickly use the skills you've already developed elsewhere. Like
Yeah,
Ben, the reason why your recon leads to bugs is because you've been doing manual hacking so much also. And so like
absolutely.
your ability to see something and know whether it's interesting or not, and know whether there is a potential SSRF here, or know whether there's a potential auth bypass there, like when you see that JavaScript file are able to potentially see that in that file because like me and Douglas always call it our like sniffers. Douglas is
Yeah.
Archangel. We always talk about like
You'll
we
be
need
here
to
next week, by the
train
way.
up. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we need to like train up our SSRF sniffer or like our IDOR sniffer. And it's like this ability to know whether or not a bug is likely in an area. And so I think been like you and other people who are doing big recon who are like, kind of seasoned hackers. When you see a website, you are very quickly, especially when you see the request from that website or the JavaScript files on
Mhm.
the website, you know whether there's likely going to be a bug or not. It's just kind of a feeling you get, and there's not a good way to train that other than just like get your hands dirty.
Yep.
And so people who are doing only recon aren't going to train those sniffers. So even if they find a site that's like actually pretty vulnerable, they're not going to know whether it's vulnerable or not unless it just like looks old, right? Like everyone
Yep.
can see like, oh, this site looks old, but most people can't necessarily intuit whether or not like an SRF is likely unless they're messing with the functionality of the site. So
Yep. And the other thing is like what you're saying is like on the nose, dude, but there's one little piece of other thing that's I think missing from that advice is that you can be great at automation, you can have the best nuclei templates, you can have the best tooling, you can have the best database of stuff, but if you don't know how to exploit an SSRF, how are you going to find a endpoint that's vulnerable to SSRF and not be
right.
able to exploit it, right? You can find a slash render, but if you don't know what parameters go to a render endpoint on an API, whether it's URL, whether it's HTML, whether it's in out, whatever all those parameters are, you can fuzz for it. But if you don't know how those things work because you haven't done manual fuzzing or manual exploitation of things in your days, you're not going to be able to go connect this to, which goes back to exactly what you said. You can't sniff for those vulnerabilities because you don't know how to exploit these to bring these into your recon. So that's I think there is a needs to be a shift for the industry to show people that you don't need to do heavy recon and you don't have to rely solely on automation and Nuclei to find your vulnerabilities. You can use Nuclei to find API endpoints that you can fuzz for later, but just I want to be able to now shift that and say, hey, you need to first learn how to do these vulnerabilities before you can jump into recon and automating a lot of this.
Yeah.
Whether you want to
Yeah. No,
blame me
no
for
doubt.
it or give me credit for it, but I'm still gonna try and make that change.
Yeah,
All right, we have
absolutely.
8 minutes. I want to make sure I'm courteous to your time. I know it's Sunday and it's a little bit ahead of time for you. It's just morning for me still. But let's talk about a little bit of mental health. It's always how I end the stream. I want to talk about mental health a little bit quickly with you. Do you do any morning routine, a daily routine, things that you do on a day-to-day basis to whether it's to keep you grounded, whether it's to keep you sane, whether it's to give structure to your day, anything like that that you have in place for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would be remiss not to mention my faith. As a Christian,
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time in prayer. I'm doing a cool thing called Exodus 90 right now. Me and Douglas and some other guys are doing it where it involves some fasting of some stuff. So, we're doing like no
Nice.
alcohol, no sweets, eating a little bit less. It's like cold showers, like daily prayer and stuff like that. But outside of that, I really find exercise to be a big mental health boost for me. I love going
Mhm.
running. I mean, there's plenty of times with three young kids that I'm stressed out or feeling frazzled. So there's a lot of chaos around the house. So getting out and going for a run is a big way to do that. I
Yeah,
don't have
absolutely.
any specific routines around hacking, but I do want to mention this because I think it's a pretty big component of bug bounty and hacking in general. Like you said, the mental health side of things.
Yeah.
Um, some big names in the private chat that you were talking about earlier were recently kind of complaining about the burnout and kind of describing it in better ways than I've ever heard it described. And I think it's useful for this community to hear about that. Like big name hackers who have been on top of the world, who have comic, HackerOne elites made
Yeah.
after them, struggled deeply with burnout, guys. And I think it's completely a mindset thing going in. I know that Douglas, he could talk more about it next week, but he often, has struggled with that from like hey, I can make this money doing bug bounty. Why am I not doing it all the time? Like that kind of like time balance.
Mhm.
And for me, I think I struggled with that for a while, but I also, um, yeah, I think on the other hand, I realize and know that time with your family, time with your kids, time spent, keeping yourself healthy is better than money, right? Like there are
Yeah.
things, money's a means to an end. And one of those ends for a lot of people is happiness and joy. And you can have those things with, at a base level of income. You can have a lot of that by just investing in exercise, investing in being outside, investing in spending time with the people that you love most. I just posted a blog called Time Well Spent, a framework, and it talks about some of that if people want to check it out. But I do think that asking yourself the questions in there, like, what are you going to wish you did more on your deathbed? It's probably not make a ton more money or spend more time hacking. Um, So, anyways, people can check that
Yeah,
out.
I can add to that a little bit too. This is the blog post that we were talking about. If anyone wants to go on to Rizzo.blog, you can see all his blogs. But this is the one that you were mentioning, and I can talk about that a little bit. I've talked about mental health a lot, and in the recent 2 years, a lot of my people that follow me on like my personal Instagram know I went through a huge shift of a personal change 2 years ago that maybe eventually I'll talk about more. But I before that happened, during the pandemic, I struggled with a lot of depression, and a lot of it came from hacking and bug bounties and work. You're making, I don't know, let's say you're making $250,000 a year from bug bounty hunting, but what are you doing with that money to enjoy it is the thing. Because
Right.
for someone that has an obsessive personality, when you're hacking, you obsessively want to find vulnerabilities, and when
Right.
there's a program that's feeding you and feeding you every day, that obsessiveness doesn't go away because you're still making money from it, right? So if you're
Right.
going into it for 6 months, you've made this money, you haven't enjoyed it, what's the point? You're just stacking
Right.
up numbers. It's great. You have unlimited money at this point. Maybe you have monopoly money in your bank account, but it's not easy because when you're out enjoying that money in your head, you're like, why am I doing this thing? When I could be making more money. If you're sitting out, going out on you go somewhere out in the nature when don't have your computer, you're sitting there going, I could be making more money. My money's time is money. You get that becomes your
Right.
mentality, and you understand what it means when time is money. But you're absolutely right, man. There should be a balance of doing these things. So people watching this personally, I do 13. I used to do 9 weeks of stretch. Now I bumped it to 13 because mental I can handle more, and 13 weeks is about a quarter. 13 weeks is my goal, and I have a piece of paper right here that tracks it every day. I'm going to show a corner of it. I can't show it, I don't think, but I have a piece of paper that lets me track it for those 13 weeks. I put an X on there that I track what I did. It's my habits. It's keep me in check. And after those 13 weeks, I am out, and usually it ends up with me going either to a life hacking event, going to a conference to speak at, or I just take a vacation. And by that 13 week, maybe it's like the 11th week is when I go, okay, I've hit my goals already because I track my goals. Like this quarter, I want to make X amount of dollars for in my bounties. I want to launch X thing, Y thing at work, and I want to do this one personal thing of being more present, for example, right?
Yeah.
On the 11th week, when I feel like that's done, I'm out, dude. I'm going somewhere. I'm going to go enjoy some of this because I don't know if I'm going to be alive to spend all this money at some point. So I'm going to go spend 20% of this and enjoy it, 10% of it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. I
you're
think
absolutely
that.
right, man. You need to have that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that like the setting the goals is the big part there, Ben. Like I think a lot of people who don't set goals, then they don't know when they can rest. If you set
Yep.
a big goal, like, hey, I'm gonna make 5 grand, or I'm gonna make, the goal is gonna be different for people based on their skill set and based on their life. Like maybe if they're gonna make $1,000 and then they're gonna rest, or they're gonna make 5,000 and then they're gonna rest. I think setting like those goals are huge because you sometimes need permission to give yourself rest. And so I think
Yep.
that people should be doing that. Like, I'm gonna make 10 grand this month and then I'm gonna take the rest of the month off. Maybe that's 2 weeks because you did it early, or maybe it's one, it's an extra 3 days because you didn't do it or whatever. I think that setting goals can be a time and a place to give yourself a break.
And you know what's really cool about hitting your goal, even if it's a monetary, whatever it is. If you hit your goal and you take a break during that break, so I'll give you an example of it. I hit my goal and I went to France about 3 weeks ago, and this is during my 13 weeks. I hit my goal and I was like, you know what? I hit it way early. I'm gonna go enjoy it for a bit. So I went to France
Yeah.
for a client thing, and then I took a week for myself. During that, I realized when I do these time offs, I'm more grateful, and I realized that
Yeah.
like I sit there, I go, holy crap, I did this. This is why I'm here. I use that money to do this, and it gives you motivated and better that want to go and do these things again versus the burnout, the opposite of it, right? When you get
Right.
burnt out and you want to, I'm not finding anything. The feeling of burning out goes away because you took a break. You took a break and you were gone for a week, and you're not doing the same thing and getting no results. And then B, you go back and you're like, oh my God, I'm ready. I want to do, 20% more this time, or I want to do a different approach. And, I challenge myself to do X, Y, and Z. So it gives you a reason, it gives you motivation. I think it's a really healthy way of doing it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
we went a little bit over time. I gotta ask you one more question, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Do
want
it.
to
That's fun.
hear about imposter syndrome. Do you struggle with imposter syndrome? Especially, I know you go to a lot of life hacking events, and I know you're on
Yeah.
those leaderboards a lot of times. And you and your team are usually either getting awards or you're on the leaderboard of some sort. But do you still, in some cases, feel like you have imposter syndrome and you struggle with it?
Of course, yeah. And I would say that, I definitely am the type of person who's not that insecure or nervous. Like I don't struggle with a lot of anxiety compared to a lot of my like friends or peers.
Um,
And I still have absolutely not crippling imposter syndrome, but very, very strong imposter syndrome. I mean, I
yeah,
very frequently feel like that I'm just faking it. That I just like have lucked myself into this situation and that I'm not here because of any skill, even though I've got bugs to kind of like quote unquote show for it. They still feel few and far between when you compare yourself to other good hackers.
yeah,
I think when you see people, like Justin out there, who puts us all to shame, it's really easy to feel, like you're inadequate or less than. But yeah, I mean, I think that everyone in the industry struggles with it. I think we just need to keep telling each other, like, hey, you're gonna have a different skill level than other people. You're going to be better at
yeah.
other things than other people. They're going to be way better than you. There's always somebody higher up on the ladder. You just need to be content with your self growth, and you need to make sure that you're prioritizing the right things.
I love that you said this, man. There's always going to be smarter people in the room, and unfortunately for you and I, that room that we're in is the internet. So,
Right. Yeah, exactly. The room's huge.
and if you are the smartest person in the room, then you're probably in the wrong fucking room. So, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for everybody watching this. And they want to, get in touch with you more. I know I put your blog up a little bit,
Yeah.
rizzo.blog. Where can they find you? What are some of your social media that you're on? And I'll put your Twitter on here real quick while you mention the rest of them.
Yeah, Twitter is Rezo REZ0 underscore underscore. That's the primary place that I'm posting. As a part of this Exodus 90, I'm still off of that until Easter, but that's where I'm at 90% of the time whenever I'm doing stuff, like sharing things. And then the
Yeah.
blog, like you said. Besides that, I am on Discord. You'll need to find me and tag me from from like Hacker 101 Discord or from somewhere like that to actually get a hold of me. But generally, I think my DMs are open on Twitter, so people can message me, and I do check the kind of what's it called, the hidden inbox when people are not your friends or like it might be spam. I do check that from time to time, so feel free to send me a DM, but follow my advice for the how to collab well by actually sharing something. Yeah.
Awesome, man. I know I said that was my last question, but I just completely forgot. I want to ask you one more. It's very unrelated to hacking, but I gotta ask you, what got you to make those AI generated art stuff that you were doing? What was the
That's a good
what?
question. What was the initial impetus for that?
Because you were for a while, dude. You were putting out like daily or weekly, like
Yes, daily
pieces of
stuff.
right, and
Yeah.
it kept getting progressively better and better and better. What caused it? What was the
Yeah, I
was it
think I
just a
have.
hobby?
Yeah, I think I just have a friend of mine, like a decent friend of mine, who, whenever it first came out, was like, "Oh man, you have to apply for this. It's gonna be so cool." And then you get to playing with it, and it's just addictive. Like, I mean, like you, I have a very addictive personality, and so I get like into a passion, and I don't know. I mean, all kind of grew up on the internet too, or at least have been on plenty of forums and stuff. Like, I think having the perfect profile picture is such a sweet, like, cool thing to do. And so I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, there's just not enough hacker art in the world. Like I love hacker culture. I love bug bounty culture. Like I love seeing like, your little office space. Honestly, if this room was not in like the center of our house, I would have it like live hacking event posters and black lights and all kinds of stuff like that. I'm here for that. And so I wanted to like give that to the hacker community. Like I wanted to just post lots of like hacker related art that people
Yeah.
could share and use. And so anyways, I don't know. I just got into Dolly and I thought it was really fascinating, and I'm also the type of person who likes to share the good things that I'm experiencing. Like if I'm if you're eating with me and my food's good, like I'm gonna force you to take a bite of it. And so I feel that way with like the Mid Journey and Dolly stuff. Like I wanted to tell people what good prompts were. I wanted to show them like the good art I was creating so they could go make their own. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean most of my stuff is all Mid Journey these days. But
We need more people that are willing to share whatever good life enjoyments they're enjoying with other people, man. We need more people
Absolutely.
like that. So thanks for making those. I watch them. I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of
Me too.
you. It's been fun, chatting with you more and more on Discord,
Man.
and passing an accident mostly with the Discord that we're both in. But yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for doing this again, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for doing this on a Sunday. I know it takes away from time with family and your personal time, so I really, really appreciate it.
Yes,
And
sir.
I can't wait to see what other blog posts, AI art generated stuff you put out, and also to see you at the next live hacking event and get to hang out with you in person and
Yeah.
maybe lose some more money at the roulette table.
There you go. Nice. Yeah, I appreciate it, Ben. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for being such an advocate in the industry, man. I love it.
Of course, man. Thank you so much. For everybody watching this, please say thank you to Rezo in the chat. Thank you again. Go follow him on Twitter, and hopefully we'll see you soon, dude. See you, man.
Yeah. See you guys.
Okay, that's it. Guys, do me a favor. If you don't, right here, I need you to go in here and do me a favor. I'm going to put this on the screen. I need you to send me a tweet. There is about 200 of you watching at Rezo. I need you to do this at NahamSec. I need you to start a tweet with that. It's going to be on the screen. I need you to throw that in a tweet and tell me what you thought of this interview. Do you want more interviews like that? I know I don't do as many interviews anymore because life's gotten a little bit busy, but I want to hear from you. Do me a favor. If you're on Twitter, go follow the both of us. Send me a tweet. I'm going to also I'm going to show some of these tweets you're sending on Twitter and read them on here before I take a break and come back. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I still want to hear from you as well. Do me a favor, drop a tweet at me. Let me know if you're watching this on Twitter, if you made it all the way to the end of this tweet or the end of this video, and what'd you think of it? Okay, while you all do that, I'm going to end our stream on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Same with you on YouTube. If you are watching this on both of those channels, do me a favor. I'm going to take a 5-second break and get some food or get a snack really quickly. But we're going to keep this stream going on Twitch. So come to twitch.tv/nahamsec. We're going to hack some stuff together, but I'm going to get off of YouTube and LinkedIn, and I'll be back to do some hacking. All right. See you all in just a few seconds.